Greetings, everyone. On March 8, 2015, a documentary called India's Daughter was released. And it's basically about an Indian girl named Jyoti who was brutally gang raped and murdered at the age of 23. And I give my utmost condolences to her and her family, not because she's a woman who got raped, but because she's a human being who suffered something that horrible and tragic. And I would give the same level of condolences to her and her family, even if she was a man who went through something this horrible and was murdered in such a horrible manner. But my question to the feminist world would be is would you feel the same level of sympathy for Jyoti if she was a man who went through something this horrible? And I would say that the likelihood would be less. In fact, the whole world is less likely and would have less likely been able to sympathize with Jyoti if she was a man who went through something as compared to a woman. And this is in no way to undermine the tragedy that she went through. It's no way to undermine the tragedy that her family has gone through. But I do want to point out the question that would her humanity been shown to the extent that it was in this documentary if she was a man, along with the level of sympathy that she also got combined? Would it have been, would the same phenomenon happen where her humanity is looked and also sympathy is being drunk towards her combined to a certain extent? Would that have been the case if she was a man? Again, I'm pressing this question, and again I say that the likelihood is less. And I mean, India is not a country that's entirely a bouquet of roses for men either. Okay? I want everybody to know that, especially the feminists. In fact, there is an article here on AVFM um, by an Indian men's rights activist called Amit Deshpande titled Misandry in India. And I would post a link in the description section to this article. And there are certain portions, more or less, of this article that I am going to read in this video. And I am honestly going to start off by. I'm just scrolling down the article to see where I might want to start off from. Okay, I'm going to start off from here, and this will show how misandric India is, and and also you'll see how bad feminism has infected India. I'm going to start off by reading the following, and I quote: "The first weapon feminists used was a woman's share in her paternal property termed as dowry. India saw an increased reportage of bride burning and dowry harassment cases in media. The cry was made shrill enough to drown any sane voice, if ever there was any. An anti-dowry harassment law, Section 498A of the IPC, was created in 1983, which is draconian and most misused. It gives a woman complete power to get anyone from her husband's family arrested. Then came the Dowry Death Law, Section 304B of the Indian Penal Code. It considers any unnatural death of a woman within 7 years of marriage as dowry death, meaning it assumes the husband and his relatives as guilty for her death and they are put behind bars immediately. There have been many other anti-men laws that have come up regularly, unquote. Now, let's say if women were going through something like this, would BBC, let's say if women were going through something like this as compared to men, would BBC be more likely to make a documentary on this, on such cruel laws? Yes, they would be more likely to make a documentary, one documentary at least, on such laws as compared to vice versa, meaning the situation where men are victims would be more likely ignored. And if the same level of victimization is being suffered from women, BBC would more likely give it attention. And the same thing can be said about India's daughter. I mean, if it was India's son, less likely for BBC to make a documentary on that as compared to the likelihood of making a documentary on this cruel phenomenon because of the fact that she is a woman and the crime that she suffered was a sex crime. But if it was a man who suffered that same level of sex crime, BBC would be less likely to make a documentary called India's Son, as BBC has done making India's daughter. Continuing with this article, misandry in India overall can be gauged with the high number of suicides of men and crime against men. This is the suicide chart, and you can see that in India, male suicides exceed female suicides. And there is probably more that can be said about India's misandric nature. And I brought up this issue, um, I brought up this documentary in a Facebook group, a MGTOW Facebook group, where a number of people commented, and I have felt like sharing some of the comments that were posted, and I'm gonna start reading them one by one. One person who I've attributed ALG, the pseudonym ALG to, is says the following, and I quote: "It happens every single day over there. A man is either robbed, shot, emotionally abused, or hacked to frickin' death with a machete. But you don't hear them say humans have to learn to treat humans with respect." Unquote. Yeah, I mean, in India's Daughter, there was this one woman who was talking about how young men need to be taught to respect women. Even though India has a history of a thing called the Rakhi Bandhan, and you'll learn more about what the Rakhi Bandhan is in this article. However, I want to make sure if this article is the one that has it. If not, I mean, I can. Oh, yeah, it does have it. And Rakhi is spelled Rakhee, and this article called Misandry in India does go over it. But I mean, I can also go over it. So the whole concept of Rakhi is like a band that a woman ties around a man's wrist. And what that basically signifies or is basically that if a man has a Rakhi tied around his wrist by a woman, then this basically means that this man is this woman's brother, and as a result of having that relationship, he is obligated to die for her protection if needed to be. And this is an ancient Indian practice. So this woman in India's daughter, this Indian woman who's saying that young men need to be taught to respect women, well, don't women need to also learn? I mean, yeah, I mean everybody needs to be taught to respect everybody. That's a given. But I would say that Indian women are not so underprivileged, and Indian women also need to have the concept of valuing male life to theirs. Like, how many Indian women are willing to give their life or lives for an Indian man as compared to vice versa? I can tell you that the numbers are not equal. Anyways, continuing with another commenter's comment, and I quote, people conflate everything with rape. If inserting a rod through her genitals is rape, why isn't kicking a man in the groin rape? Or circumcising him also rape? Or squeezing his testicles also rape? Gruesome as though the crime was, men have been stabbed bad enough to suffer similar injuries. What with intestines torn to shreds and spilling out of body. But that doesn't get people's attention or outrage. Stabbing and slicing with choppers and swords is one of the common modes of serious assault, and they are in the news every few days. No outrage. Same individual, in another comment, says the following. I'm sure people who work in hospitals must regularly see pretty gruesome injuries from criminal attacks, yet this one case merits so much media attention. Why? It's a woman and rape. And this was one of the comments that I left, the one in italics. And in this comment, I basically say, and I quote, one thing they brought up in the documentary was how people are happier when a boy is born as compared to a girl being born. The question I have is, could it be because now they have a potential beast of burden? Unquote. And another commenter who I assigned the pseudonym PR. And again, I'm assigning these pseudonyms to basically keep these people anonymous. This guy PR, in response to my comment here, had this to say, and I quote, girls may be seen as a burden because for marriage the high net worth men are few and far between. Be betting the girl becomes a fantastic innovator that earns plenty or marries a fantastically rich guy are very small odds because you only earn plenty after lots of experience, which makes you old and thus less attractive as a woman. Since you aren't fertile, go blame nature, it's not men causing that problem. And a guy with plenty of options will choose the best one, which won't necessarily mean the girl child that the parents have. It's funny how society doesn't want to tell women that most men have mediocre existence. So most women will have it too. They figure inspiration beats effort and technical competence. No wonder only really rich or want to show they are rich countries go feminist. They're the only ones who can afford to. Now, this comment is by ALG, and I quote, and no one seems to ask how or why the level of cruelty being relegated to such reprehensible levels, where in virtually every single cases, it's extremely impoverished men with little to no access to India's bourgeoising class and their lifestyle and economic opportunities and advancements in the one hand, while on the other the typical struggles of ghetto working class communities living in complete and utter disgusting squalor. Have you seen how the elites, which I'm sure the parties involved come from, treat the poor over there? They don't even consider them human. The global feminists Nazi have essentially hijacked the grievances of the poor, especially in India, and completely co-opted that as their own. Again, continuing ALG's comment. It is clear-cut example of unbridled female narcissistic and hypergamous behavior run completely out of control, and this is just the beginning. Their goal is the complete eradication of the male species aside from the select few qualified to procreate. The feminist global eugenics project is exactly what they claim. They're going to alleviate world poverty by the systematic elimination of the working poor man into absolute extinction, unquote. Sorry about that. And again, I want to end this video by saying that I do give my utmost condolences to Jyoti. Jyoti did not deserve to go through what she went through, and I give my condolences to her family. They don't deserve to go through what they have gone through. And I want to even, alongside with all that, say that I would feel the same way about Jyoti and her family if she was a man who went through something that horrible to that extent and that tragedy to that tragic extent. And I want the criminals that did this to also pay. But then again, I would feel the same way about these criminals if they were women who committed such a heinous crime of such immensely high degree. Can I say the same thing about the feminists? I mean, I can't. And if I am wrong, please do correct me if I'm wrong. Please do. Anyways, catch you guys later.